Welcome to another edition of FreightWaves Now. I'm Emily Zink. I hope everyone had a great weekend. We're going to get started with meteorologist Nick Austin. He's monitoring some flooding in the Deep South.
Hello, everybody. Hope you had a great weekend. It's Monday once again, and we need to know a few things about the weather today. Luckily, there's not going to be a lot of disruptive weather as far as freight movement and for truckers out there on the roads today. But one particular part of the country where there could be problems with flooding here and there is across the Florida Peninsula, parts of the Deep South as well. So we'll take a look at that first. We don't really officially have a lot of flood watches up for this part of the country yet, but right along the I-10 corridor, anywhere from New Orleans all the way over to Jacksonville, and then 75 from Macon down to around Tampa or so, we could see some really heavy rain at times from thunderstorms today. And it wouldn't be out of the question that maybe some interstate ramps and some secondary routes, there might be localized flooding here and there along the I-10 corridor. So that's going to be one of the biggest trouble spots. There will be scattered storms across the plain states today, parts of the Northeast and the Midwest, but not a lot of widespread storms and not a lot of severe storms. So that's the good thing. The only other weather problem today, which could put a little stress on some of the drivers' trucks out there and on some of the drivers if you have to spend any time outside of your trucks, is the heat. We're going to see a lot of really hot weather right across the plains from Texas up to Oklahoma City, Little Rock, down to northern Louisiana, parts of western Tennessee and the Memphis area as well, and all the way up into parts of Kansas. So a big area where we'll see temperatures well into the 90s, and the heat index will be anywhere from 105 to about 110 degrees. So there are heat advisories, excessive heat warnings up for that part of the country, right around the middle section of the country. Another part of the country that'll see some heat today, right around Philadelphia, even up towards the Boston area along the I-95 corridor. A lot of temperatures will be cracking 90 degrees, and the heat index in a lot of areas, again, will be near 100 degrees. For this part of the country, even this time of the year, that is pretty hot stuff, and it could be pretty dangerous for any of you drivers out there to have to spend any time outside of your trucks for a lengthy period. So just be really careful out there. If you do have to spend time outdoors at all outside of your trucks, just make sure that if you start to feel a little bit woozy, if you start to just feel any discomfort at all, that means you need to get inside in the air conditioning just as quickly as possible. Those are the three things that you need to know about for today. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. Have a great Monday, and be careful out there.
Hey everyone, and welcome to FreightWaves Now Carrier Update presented by AT&T Business. Today I wanted to talk about where the freight volumes are in the country and some of the patterns that we're seeing emerge across the United States. So behind me I have the map of the Outbound Tender Volume Index, which displays volumes in relation to the rest of the country, and darker blues are going to be your higher volume areas. Over here in California, you see the Ontario market, the biggest market in the country. Been one of the hottest areas of the country over the last 12 months because of the freight pull forward. But up here you have the San Francisco, Sacramento, Fresno market. Sacramento, Fresno, and the Northern California area is typically a backhaul market. Carriers go in, but they have a lot of trouble pulling the freight back out. But we're seeing some emerging trends coming out of this area. If we look at my next chart, you're going to see this is the Outbound Tender Volume Index for Fresno as well as San Francisco. And you can see this upward trend over the last 2 to 3 weeks. Now, it hasn't changed the market from a backhaul scenario, but it is starting to make it less of a backhaul market. This is important to watch for carriers who are sitting there trying to figure out whether or not they need to go into the Northern California market or not. It's becoming a better market for carriers to operate out of, and if this continues up, this might actually change it to what we consider a head haul market, which is very favorable for carriers. Sacramento is still operating as a heavy backhaul, but San Francisco, sitting around the port, something we've been watching over the last several weeks or several months emerging as a stronger market to be in, needs to be something that carriers watch over the next several months.
Improve your fleet's efficiency with AT&T Fleet Complete, a 4G solution for tracking vehicles and simplifying ELD compliance. AT&T Fleet Complete, delivering fleet solutions for every business.
It's time for your Monday brokerage update, sponsored by FreightWaves Sonar. My name's Kyle Cunningham. Let's jump into a head haul map, looking at volumes all around the USA. So in your brokerage update today, what we want to look at is the concept of how are you going to set yourself up for this week. We've got a lot of red here on the map. Indianapolis, talking about Dallas, Texas as well. Red is going to imply a lot more inbound volume versus outbound volume. So if you see any zones here that you're working in, these are zones you really want to hit hard this week and take very good precaution on getting the most margin. On the opposite side of the coin, Harrisburg, talking about Fort Worth as well, those blue zones, you're going to have to work a little bit harder. If you run a lot of freight out of those regions, come into work a little bit earlier and look for a better truck. Now here's an option on this map. If you find yourself hauling freight out of a blue zone, quickly run up, find a truck in a red zone and drag it into that blue zone, possibly find yourself a better rate. Now let's kick it on over and talk about what's happening out of LA. So at the beginning of the week, we always want to look and find a specific market that has a lot of volume, but low rejections. What is that going to mean for the brokers out there? So let's look at that Southern California market. You can see here we've got Los Angeles, California. We've got Ontario right outside, that Fontana market. And then we've got San Diego as well. So there's a really interesting pattern. They basically follow each other nearly to a T, but San Diego right here actually catching up and not diverging from the trend at all. So under 1% for all outbound rejections. You should see really good margins on this if you're holding some valuable freight. Now let's talk pricing. Let's see what's happening over there. So we got our DAT long haul van rates. We're running LA to Seattle, $2.15 a mile, and then LA to Dallas, opposite side, $1.48 a mile. What we're able to do inside of Sonar is break down the outbound rejections by a specific lane as well. So we've got our LA to Dallas lane. That's matching up there, 2.16%, extremely favorable for brokerage. So that $1.48, you might be able to slap it down just a little further. Now our LA to Seattle line, this is our white line here for the rejections. So a $2.15 a mile, that's a pretty good rate for that mile. You might be able to drag it down just a little bit as well because it's just sitting one little point above at 2.17. So let's go ahead and move over to next, talking about Dallas. Your lead time increasing. As the lead time is going to increase, you're going to see a weaker rate to the truck. As you can see right here, a lot of outbound options for Dallas, while the outbound rejections are sitting under 3%. Good news for brokers. Next up, let's see what happens to close it out. We've got the outbound volume in Dallas trending down. You can see basically from mid-August until now, the options for carriers are quickly dwindling. Hey, as always, please stay tuned to FreightWaves Now for your brokerage updates every single day.
Hi, I'm Henry Byers bringing you your Shippers Update. Today we're looking at containerized ocean freight, specifically on what's known as the Trans-Pacific Eastbound, China to North America, most specifically. What I have is the Freightos Baltic Daily Index. That's a daily measure of container rates from China to North America East Coast, which is represented in green, and China North America West Coast, which is represented in blue. And what I wanted to show that these rates are actually down year over year. If we look to the East Coast, we're down 9%. If we look to the West Coast, we're down 32%. And what that tells me is demand's just not quite there yet. We had the pull forward in Q4 of 2018. That volume's been enough to kind of, keep rates at a minimum here going into peak season. But I do expect things to change, and here's why. We're actually measuring U.S. customs import shipments on a daily basis, and I wanted to show you the week over week percent change. You can see in Los Angeles, we're up about 6% week over week. In Elizabeth, 5.5, Seattle, 18.8. What that tells me is that week over week, those U.S. customs import shipments have gone up that much. So we are seeing peak season well underway. We're heading into what's known as the middle of it here on September 1st, and I do expect rates to rise, but they're just not quite there yet.
Thanks for watching another episode of FreightWaves Now. Of course, you're watching on YouTube, so hit subscribe. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. We hope everyone has a great Monday.